As we've been saying, it's important for us to understand nonverbal communication in context. So we're going to take a look at nonverbal communication in relational contexts, professional contexts, cultural contexts, and gendered contexts. So first, we have to understand how nonverbal communication behaves in relational contexts. So nonverbal communication has a central function in establishing and maintaining interpersonal relationships. Communicating nonverbally with people increases our chances of initiating interpersonal relationships. And once we have established a relationship, and we've progressed from the basic information exchange and establishing those early interpersonal bonds, nonverbal communication also helps us to maintain those relationships and helps us to do things like communicate our emotions and seek and provide social and emotional support. In addition, we have to understand nonverbal communication in professional contexts. Surveys of current professionals and managers have found that nonverbal skills are important in their jobs. And a consistent issue that's been reported by employees has been a difficulty with mixed messages that are coming from managers. So nonverbal communication plays a big part of that. And professionals need to be aware of how things like context, status, and power interact with specific channels of nonverbal communication. In addition, nonverbal communication interacts with the cultural context. So the norms for nonverbal communication vary from country to country and also among cultures within a particular country. Now, some nonverbal communication appears to be somewhat innate and universally recognized, whereas others are going to vary. So, for example, smiling has been seen as a nonverbal behavior that is universal because everyone smiles when they are happy, right? But some of these nonverbals are going to be different in different cultures. For example, if you were to hold up your hand to display the number 5, and then change your hand to display the number 2, if you are from the US or the UK, you are probably using your index and middle finger to show the number 2. Whereas other European countries tend to use the thumb and index finger to indicate 2 instead. And how you use your hands might also get you in trouble if you're unaware of the cultural differences that exist in nonverbal communication. So, for example, if you give someone a thumbs up, if you are in America, that usually means good job or good or way to go, or maybe it means that somebody is looking for a ride, right? They're hitchhiking. But if you are in mainland Europe, that's generally how they indicate the number 1. If you are in Greece, you might be accidentally saying up yours to someone. And it's really interesting how it can be so different. Similarly with the OK symbol that you see here on the screen, with the thumb and index finger forming a circle. In the US, this means OK, whereas it means money in Japan. It can mean you're nothing in France, and it can mean the equivalent of the middle finger in Brazil. Even things like our head movements, our eye contact, our haptics like handshaking, all of that can have different messages in different cultures. And finally, we have to understand the context of gender when it comes to nonverbal communication. Now, in our daily lives, we tend to think that men and women are very different from one another, but we tend to be more alike than we do different. That being said, there are some particular nonverbal behaviors that we have noticed that differ pretty greatly between men and women. And I want to preface all of this by saying that these are generalizations that are based on the way that men and women are socialized in our particular culture. So, for example, with gestures, Women tend to use more gestures in regular conversation than men do, but when men do use gestures, they tend to use much larger gestures. In addition, women tend to make more eye contact with men, and men and women use space very differently. Men are implicitly socialized to take up as much space as possible. You might have heard of the term manspreading before, where a man will be sitting in a public space, for example, on a bus or a subway, with his knees spread widely apart, taking up as much space as he can. Whereas women are explicitly socialized to take up less space, to cross their legs, to fold in on themselves, to make themselves as small as possible so they don't impose upon anyone. And there are a lot of other differences that have been discovered or that we enact as different genders in our society. But even though these differences do exist, we are more alike in our communication than we are different. So as we have been saying, it's important for us to take in all of these different contexts when we are trying to interpret a nonverbal message so that we can be sure that we are getting the whole message rather than just a part of it.